What's going on YouTube? It's Teach, back again with another video, and today bringing you yet another 2-round NFL mock draft. Excited to bring it your way. It's been a couple weeks, so a lot of things and new names to talk about. So let me hear your thoughts down below in the comment section. Who's your favorite team? Did you like the selection they gave your squad? Who goes too high? Who goes too low? And also, if you want to throw in some position rankings, I'd love to hear kind of where you guys are at this point in the draft cycle. We're getting kind of into the meat and potatoes of it all, so love to hear you guys' thoughts. And also just want to note, shout out to those who commented about the free-for-all trading setting here on Mock Draft Database. That's my mock draft simulator of choice. So I have turned that on, so don't worry. Today, everything trade-wise is going to line up with basically what I saw on the drafttech.com trade value draft chart. So if you have any problem with the trade compensation, go to that website and you'll see kind of my my point numbering system. We're just going off of their trade chart. You know, it's also the end of November, so don't kill me about trades. I'll get a little bit more accurate once we get to the end of April. So anyways, at long last, let's jump right into it, starting with the Chicago Bears at pick number 1. And this is going to be an easy start for me. Back-to-back mock drafts where I have Drake Maye as the first quarterback taken off the board. Nothing against Caleb Williams. I just think Maye's structure and his ability to play within structure separates him a little bit. He may not have as much, outside the pocket, play breaking down upside maybe that Williams brings. Williams really does remind me of like prime Rodgers, like Super Bowl run Aaron Rodgers with that. But I think Drake Maye still has a lot of that, but just a little bit more comfortability, being able to get the ball out quick, playing in the rhythm of an offense. I think I feel a little bit better about Drake Maye doing it at this point. But that being said, that takes us to the number 2 pick. I'm going to have the Arizona Cardinals trade down. I think Monty Ossenforth really is going to take a very patient approach. I love what he did in the draft last year. And I think it's going to be a lot of trade downs, especially if they are picking at 2. And even at this point, like, you're just going to have New England come up one spot, which I know Patriots fans are going to be like, why do we need to do that? What you're really doing is securing that no one's going to jump you. So I decided to go ahead and just make a next year's second-round pick. Again, using the trade chart. Don't yell at me. But this is where I'm going to have Caleb Williams come off the board. Again, I'm a little concerned about the average time to throw for Caleb Williams. I need him to be able to play quicker and process a little quicker. And kind of even talking about that, I had some Bears fans last week not in love with the Drake Maye selection because, Mitch Trubisky, UNC quarterback, they're different prospects. I think Drake Maye, by far and away, is the more stout prospect between him and Trubisky. It's a very different quarterback class now versus then. And then, kind of my response to that as well, Caleb Williams doesn't really get the ball out quick and doesn't really take what the easy throws might be there. And those were some of the same issues that, the processing and the time to throw that were there with Justin Fields. So I think either one of these quarterbacks, you can make a narrative to where it could scare Chicago off of one of those guys. So I think Maye's just a little better. That's why I did Maye. And then I have New England moving up to take Caleb Williams at 2. They need a quarterback of the future. And right now, Mac Jones isn't doing a whole lot in structure. So I don't know how much of a difference there really will be from that standpoint. But Williams brings you a whole lot more upside, getting outside the pocket, extending plays, and making the big stuff happen. And just that, type of playmaking that New England hasn't had since Brady. So Patriots move up a spot. And then really for Arizona, it's almost like what we talked about with the Bears last draft cycle before the Jalen Carter, automobile incident and, the tainted draft stock that came with that, with the loss of life there with the UGA staffers and a player. So we kind of talked about the Bears moving down just 1 to 2 spots and still getting Jalen Carter, the guy who felt like a perfect fit for that defense, right? But they still get a ton of draft capital moved down. And that's basically what we're doing here with Arizona, right? Trade down a couple spots and still get that number 1 wide receiver of the future. And, I've said this multiple times, especially with the injuries the NFC's had. Kyler Murray's a top 5 quarterback in that conference right now. So you pair him up with the best receiver prospect we've seen since Jamar Chase, maybe even since Julio Jones, depending on how you rank Jamar versus Marv. But yeah, it's just kind of a once in a few years type of wide receiver, guaranteed number 1 as soon as he hits the league. Pairing him up with Kyler Murray, I love the idea of that. So then we get to Chicago here at 4, and I'm actually going to have Chicago trade out of the spot. Trust me, Olu Fashanu to me makes a ton of sense here, but I'm actually going to go ahead and have Washington move up. I can't remember exactly what the draft capital was. Might just be a future second. Again, we will iron all this out. This trade, generator says that's about as much as Washington can offer without it being too skewed. So we'll just make it a future second, moving up 3 spots. And they're not even drafting a quarterback here. I'm just going to give the Washington Commanders Olu Fashanu. I think Sam Howell holds on the ball for a little too much. That's for sure part of the sack equation. But I think both sides of this narrative can be true, right? Like Sam Howell holds the ball too long. Charles Leno's not great. He's okay against below average edge rushers, but anybody who's above average or just better than Charles Leno, they whoop them. So I think they need an upgrade there at left tackle for sure. I don't think Andrew Wiley is great at right tackle either, but let's just address that blindside protector spot. Olu Fashanu, to me, the best pass protector in this class pretty comfortably. Let's go ahead and get him in the building there in Washington. You move up 3 spots. It's a future second. It's not too much. Bankroll in the future wise, but you get a clear upgrade there at left tackle that they need. So then we get to the Giants here at 5. I'm going to go Malik Neighbors. Right now, I feel pretty good about him being my wide receiver 2. Just a great separator. Currently leads college football in regards to receiving yards, and he's just a smooth player to watch. Sun breaking out of his routes, gets a lot of separation from DBs, both over the middle of the field, but also on the sideline, working deep, but also dynamic enough with the ball in his hands. A guy that I think threatens all 3 levels of the field. It can be used in any facet of the offense. Yak, separator, possession, deep threat, you name it, he can do it. So I feel really comfortable with him going top 5. And it kind of feels like the opportunity for Brian Daboll to get a Stephon Diggs type to elevate Daniel Jones. And part of the reason I'm not going to go quarterback here for the Giants is, one, I've done that, and I don't want every mock draft feeling the same. But also, that contract might be too much to move off from. They might need one more offseason and basically one more season with Daniel Jones before they can totally part ways and cut an end to that contract. Because it's a 4-year extension, but with the guarantee money, it's really a 2-year deal. But it was a 2-year deal that it's going to be hard to get out of. So I think they got one more year stuck with Daniel Jones. So let's go ahead and try to make an impact and change up this offense as much as we can with an impact player like Malik Neighbors. Speaking of impact players, I'm going to have Brock Bowers go to Tennessee. I agree it's not the most pressing need. With Chig Okonkwo, I think is a solid player, good blocker, athletic guy. Ultimately, I think the emphasis is going to be just putting weapons all around Will Levis going into year 2. And, with Neighbors off the board, you could go Keon Coleman, you could go Rome Odunze. I wouldn't hate it here in the top 10. But I think Brock Bowers is going to be a guy that goes pretty high. I know he's a tight end, and he's a little bit of an undersized tight end, but he's a great blocker for that. And, we're coming off a draft where the Titans just took Peter Skoronski. This guy with short arms, but, just a great football player. I could see where Mike Vrabel, assuming he's there next year, and Ron Carthen, the new GM there for Tennessee, is just looking at him and they're like, yeah, there's maybe quote-unquote limitations, but he's just a great football player. He's an extra receiving threat that we need. We'll see what happens with DeAndre Hopkins this offseason, but Burks, not a whole lot else. Kyle Phillips has played some okay football. Let's get Brock Bowers in the building. Let's see if we can give Will Levis a bona fide stud and maybe try to have a Kelsey-ish type of role in this offense for him if Nuke Hopkins isn't back, where, yeah, he's a tight end, but he can still be the number 1 target in this offense. So then we get to the Chicago Bears after their trade down. I'm going to go Keon Coleman here. Again, I feel fine with Coleman or Odunze being the 3rd receiver off the board in the top 10. I just think Brock Bowers ultimately might be a guy who goes higher, or kind of right after those top 2 receivers are off the board. Maybe Bowers slips in there before we get a 3rd receiver. That's what I wanted to explore here. But Keon Coleman, man, Darnell Mooney is going to hit the free agent market. I think we all know Chase Claypool isn't that guy. And you have DJ Moore, who's awesome after the catch, solid route runner. Again, another guy who can win at all 3 levels, but I really like what they've been doing, the yards after the catch stuff for DJ Moore. Now let's go get this athletic freak at 6'4", 200 plus pounds, plenty of muscle, plenty of play strength, but can go up and win the football in the air, kind of like they thought Claypool would, but also bring a deep threat to the offense that they might be losing with Darnell Mooney. Or the most optimistic side is they bring back Mooney on a reasonable contract, have him, Coleman, and DJ Moore. That's a receiver trio that I think is really, really exciting for a new age, a new chapter there in Chicago. As of course, we took Drake May with the number 1 pick. All right, pick number 8. I have the New York Giants here. It's a little boring to go in this direction, but ultimately, I do think it is the right direction to go with the Jets at this point. I'm going to go Joe Alt. It's a little boring for sure. Don't get me wrong. Not totally in love with having to do that, but because it feels like you see a lot of mocks where the Jets are just taking offensive line. But, at the same time, it makes a lot of sense. Mekhi Becton, luckily enough, not a major injury, but they got to find some answers there. And maybe this is a trade down spot, right? Maybe they're attacking into our offensive line, thinking AVT can play one of those tackle spots. But even if AVT is one of those guys, I think it's worthwhile having a 3rd guy in the building, because I would preferably have AVT playing guard, and then if push comes to shove, you move him to tackle. Joe Alt, been rock solid as a pass protector, awesome in the run game as well. Would love that addition there for the Jets. So then the Atlanta Falcons, I'm going to give them my edge one right now. Laiatu Latu still feels like a team that could use a little bit more juice off the edge, and Latu to me is NFL ready. Full arsenal of moves, great with his hands, enough athleticism to play at the NFL level. And just a guy I think can be instant impact, because there's not a whole lot of coaching needed. We'll talk about some of these other first-round edge rushers. It's like the athleticism's there, but there's a little bit of work in progress to be done in regards to actually being a pass rusher. I think Laiatu Latu, what little bit he sacrifices and not being the most elite athlete, he has in regards to technique and polish, and he's just refined. So would love to have him inserted to an Atlanta defense that's already made huge headways. You get an NFL-ready guy like Laiatu Latu, that's a really scary defense in a year's time. Sticking at the edge spot, I'm going to give the Tampa Bay Buccaneers Jared Verse. And, coming into the season, Verus was my number one edge, and I was really excited to see what type of season he would have. Ultimately, I think Laiatu Latu's, it's not necessarily that Verus has been disappointing, it's just Laiatu Latu's just been that awesome another year. And Verus has been more good than great, but I still think for this Bucs defense, like Shaq Barrett's getting up there, Joe Tryon-Shoyinka's been, I think, good, but maybe not as great as I was hoping this third-year leap would be. So adding a Jared Verse, you keep him in state, that's always a fun storyline, right? But you partner up with Joe Tryon-Shoyinka, that feels like an edge tandem of the future. Maybe you try to find like a late-round guy to be that third, that DPR rotational edge rusher, and then, okay, that might be your trio of the future. But yeah, you just got to start looking for an upgrade there, and the Bucs pass rush just has not been as awesome as it was in that Super Bowl run when they won it all with Brady. All right, then we get to the Los Angeles Chargers. And I'm going to go ahead and make it happen. I'm going to go with Nate Wiggins here. Wiggins might end up being the first DB off the board, man. He is just at 6'2", 205 pounds, good arm length, maybe the best ball skills of any of the corners in this year's class. I mean, the guy's freak. But then you also have a play like, what happened in the Clemson UNC game where he's running down Hampton and punching out at the 1 yard line and ultimately getting a touchback out of that. Like that type of effort and hustle, coaches see, scouts see, and they love it. So we're not just talking about a guy with the upside because of the size, the athleticism, and all those traits you want to see, but like the guy puts it all on the line. So I think this is a guy who's just having his stock go up and up and up. And I like Kool-Aid McKinstry, I like Keelan King. There are a lot of corners I like, but I don't know if any of these guys have had a season where it's like, okay, yep, Sauce Gardner type, where this guy's going in the top 10, or like Devon Witherspoon last year, where it's like, dude, this tape is NFL ready. This guy belongs in the top 10 somewhere. I don't know if anybody's had that type of season other than maybe Nate Wiggins. So ultimately, I'm starting to kind of turn a page, and I think Nate Wiggins might end up being the first DB off the board. Still a lot of football left, so we'll wait and see there. So then we get to the Los Angeles Rams here at pick 12. And ultimately, what I'm going to opt to do here is have the Los Angeles Rams trade back with the Cincinnati Bengals. And Cincy's secondary might be well enough, set, right? Not entirely sure they need to make a splash in regards to getting a first round corner. But here I kind of felt like the fit was right with Cooper DeJean. I think DJ Turner and Cam Taylor-Britt can be the outside corner tandem in the future. But you also look at this year, and it's almost a 1-to-1 correlation. The games that Cincinnati's played really good defensive games, Mike Hilton's been awesome. And then the games where he struggled, been kind of out of place, hasn't been as impactful, the Bengals have been picked apart a little bit. And, you could also look at safety being a big-time need. They've given up some chunk plays more than they have, over the last couple seasons to this point. And that's a little concerning, obviously, first year with no Jesse Bates, no Von Bell. That could be a part of it. So whether DeJean's playing safety or I'm kind of envisioning here, he's the Mike Hilton replacement. Hilton's going to be a free agent. You just have this souped-up, ideal size, 6'1", 207, long arms, but a willing tackler, and just, again, an absolute freaky athlete. Can be used as a blitzer like they used with Hilton. Can be another impact run defender like Mike Hilton, but also could just be a stud in coverage. So love this as an opportunity to not only maintain a status quo with a good player like Mike Hilton, but maybe even get a little bit better there. I love the idea of DeJean being as close to the football as possible. So love him being that Mike Hilton replacement there in the slot. And honestly, I think it's warranted, worth moving up 5 picks, giving up the 3rd and the 4th to make it happen. So then we get to Green Bay here at pick 13. I'm actually going to have the Green Bay Packers move down here. If the opportunity presented itself where they could have landed someone like a Joe Alt, would have loved that. But I'm going to have the Buffalo Bills move up 5 spots as well. So we're having both these AFC powerhouses move up a handful of spots. This is going to be a little tricky. What about both 4s? Cool. We're not getting to the 4th round today, so it's not a major concern. I can't remember exactly what I had the trade competition for. But let's just move along and let's just give the Buffalo Bills Rome Odunze. Hey, look, Gabe Davis is going to hit the market this year. And I think Odunze brings you that size and the ability to be a deep threat while being so much more dynamic. Like, you're coming off a game where Gabe Davis had no catches, and we're coming in, this is still a time where the NFL defenses in specific love to play too high. Like, they are trying to take away deep balls. So if you're a deep ball, go ball wide receiver, Marquez Valdes-Scantling, Gabe Davis, that's your one note. Defenses are now playing a style that are going to take that one note away. So I think Odunze can still bring you that field stretching ability, but also be used as a guy who wins over the middle of the field. He's not a great yak player, but can be used a little bit in that. But I just think he gives you more route running ability basically at all 3 levels to do more than what you have with Gabe Davis, while keeping someone of that same frame, right? That can still push the ball down the field. May not have the top end speed that a Gabe Davis does, but man, I think Rome Odunze gives you Gabe Davis plus a whole lot more of that offense that really needs. They need someone other than Stephon Diggs who can win consistently. Kincaid's get more involved, Shakir too, but I think if you add Odunze into the mix, now that is a pass catching core that can take them to the Super Bowl. Then we get to the Raiders here at 14. I'm going to go with Kool-Aid McKinstry here, and we are going to go quarterback in the second round. Don't worry, Raiders fans. I just still look at the outside corner spot, and man, I think there's still some upgrades to be had there. Nate Hobbs has played really well, but to me, he's a slot guy. I think Patrick Graham's doing a lot with not nearly enough. So I think if you got Kool-Aid McKinstry, who right now still my CB1 just ahead of Wiggins, taking kind of dishing out of that outside corner conversation here. But man, love the length. It may not be anything special in regards to straight line speed, but I think he's got it everywhere else. Been starting since he was a true freshman at Bama. That speaks to his technical skills and refinement at the position, understanding how to play the position. So you have him on the outside, Max Crosby. They're starting to find some additional production from some of those other edge rushers. Javon Merrick's looked a little better this year. Nate Hobbs in the slot. Okay, now it's starting to look like a more balanced defense. They just need to get that number one outside guy. I think McKinstry could be just that. To the Indianapolis Colts, I'm going to give him Cam Kinchens. Not a pairing I've done just yet, but I've been wanting to do that for a while now. I think this Colts defense just needs an impact, safety that they haven't had in just a little bit. Kenny Moore's had a really nice season out of the slot. Yeah, you could go outside corner, but they've also made a lot of investments there. This past draft, specifically Juju Brent's second rounder, and that could be something where it's a deep enough corner class. Maybe you attack that in the second round. Not going to do that in today's video, but I have done that in the past. But Cam Kinchens, man, I mean, look no further than the Louisville Miami first quarter. Like that first quarter interception was bananas, and that's the range Cam Kinchens plays with, but he's more than that. Like, he can defend into the slot. He can play in the box. He's a willing tackler. He can come down, down the field and hit pretty hard. He's not the hardest hitter, but he can lay a thump or two. Like, he's as close to a well-rounded safety as there is in this class. And man, especially as a playmaker over the top, if they're going to stick in this Gus Bradley cover 3 defense, you need that center fielder. And Cam Kinchens, I totally think could be that for Indianapolis. All right, then to the Denver Broncos here at pick 16. A little something different here, and maybe a little bit higher than a lot of people are willing to mock him, but this is where I think Kingsley Suamataia should be going. You have another year of the Garrett Bowles contract, but it's a cap number of $20 million, dead cap of 4. So the quick math of that, you could save about $16 million against the cap moving on from Garrett Bowles. The Broncos are starting to win games, so that's probably making him happy. But I could also see them wanting to get cheaper and younger at the position. I could also see a world where they draft Suamataia and say, hey, maybe he's not quite ready to make the jump to be full-time NFL starter right away, and they keep Bowles around, for next season too. And then his contract expires, Suamataia steps in as a starter. They could also explore right tackle here, but the Mike McGlinchey contract's a tough one to move on from. So that's ultimately why I went Suamataia over Fuaga. These two guys are both pretty close to being my OT3. Really, OT3 might be like the hardest decision for me to make the rest of this class, because I like Latham, I like Fuaga, I like Suamataia. It's just a really good tackle class. It's a good problem to have. But here I'm going to go ahead and say the Broncos, kind of draft ahead. Maybe he can be a right-away starter, but maybe they're thinking a year ahead. Suamataia, bookend tackle of the future in Denver. So then we get to the Los Angeles Rams here, and this is a really easy one for me. Dallas Turner. I mean, we've already seen like how good Byron Young has been considering the attention Aaron Donald gets. He's just such an explosive athlete and and he's also a really good run defender as well. So he plays the edge, but also he's so explosive off the line that if he's getting one-on-ones, he's going to win a fair amount of them. And now I just want to get a more polished version of that. Dallas Turner, I think, has a more refined move set. He's added a little bit of weight, so he's added like an ability to counter. If he doesn't win right away, he continues to fight through the play. We know he can win off the outside shoulder with that burst, but now with a little more strength, he's got a second way in which he can win. So him, Byron Young, with Aaron Donald still playing really well in the middle, sign me up for that. That's a scary pass rush there for the Rams. And then, of course, we're going to go into the secondary in the second round. We're going to rebuild this defense basically through these 2 rounds and get this team ideally in a healthy spot with Stafford healthy and Cooper Kupp fully at 100%. This could become a team that's scary once again. Then we get to the Green Bay Packers here at 18. I'm going to have Patrick Paul come off the board. I don't like Paul more than I like Latham or Fuaga. Those guys are right tackles only. So, and there's a world where you could still convince me maybe that's the move here. And I'd love to hear what Packers fans are thinking. Like, where's your preferred spot for Zach Tom? Because I will listen to this. Do you prefer Zach Tom in right tackle or left tackle? And if so, like, kind of fill in the blank here. You could have Paul be your selection. I think of him more as a second rounder because it's not as much athletic upside, but dude has pterodactyl wings for arms and a great instinct for the position and enough mirroring ability to where he's not a total slug against speed rushers. But he does tend to struggle a little bit more with speed rushers versus power rushers. But so if you're a Packers fan, you're like, hey, Zach Tom, perfect world. He's playing right tackle. Patrick Paul could be an upgrade over Rasheed Walker, who hasn't been embarrassing, but ultimately he's a day 3 pick and he's kind of played like that. So I'd like to put a first-round investment at one of these tackle spots. So again, Packers fans, let me know what you prefer, a left tackle or right tackle here. If you prefer a left tackle, let's go Patrick Paul. If you prefer a right tackle, I'd love the idea of Talise Fuaga there in Green Bay, to be honest with you. So I feel like Zach Tom can hold up at left tackle. Fuaga, be a really nice compliment on the other side. But we went Paul this time. Let's get on to the New Orleans Saints here at 19. I think I might have done this in my last mock, but dude, the more I watch of Brian Thomas Jr., the more I like this guy. It really, I don't know if I'll, like, at the end of this, draft cycle, if I'll say, hey, Brian Thomas is the best receiver at this. Like, I don't know if he has any one trait that I'm like, he's a better separator than Malik Neighbors. I wouldn't say that. And I don't know if he's as good of a catch point, contested catch guy as, a Keon Coleman or something like that. But, man, he's just like, if I were to rank these guys 1 through 3, damn, he'd probably be top 3, top 5 in just about every skill set. He's just so well-rounded, so balanced that it's hard to imagine him not being a pretty good football player at the next level. And I think he's got room and a ceiling that goes higher than being just pretty good. So Michael Thomas is on IR right now for the Saints. Could see a world where they're moving on from him. They're kind of probably done with his injury history and all the inconsistency in regards to when he's on the field. Brian Thomas, Chris Olave, you draft from both receiver U's, that could be a really awesome receiver pairing in the future. Plus Rashid Shaheed sprinkling in some big plays there on top. That's how you keep a strength of strength there in New Orleans. To the Minnesota Vikings, Michael Penix Jr. is going to be my selection here. I think my last mock I had Penix go to the Rams with them trading back in the first round. And I'm like, oh man, dude, Sean McVay, what he could cook up with Michael Penix pushing the ball deep down the field, sign me up. But I mean, you know who is calling games just as well for the most part as Sean McVay is? Kevin O'Connell. KOC's in his bag. He got a little figured out, over the course of the game. I think the Broncos started to come up with an answer against Kevin O'Connell, and that offense slowed down a little bit. But I also think that kind of comes with, Josh Dobbs, right? Like, he's a 2-read guy and he wants to scramble. Take away those first 2 reads and contain, the offense might get a little stagnant. I think it was more the Broncos defense coming up with answers than KOC maybe getting figured out, but I think both can be true. Getting back on track here, Kirk Cousins, yeah, maybe he comes back. The injury maybe lowers the asking price enough to where they're willing to just pony up for 1 more year. Or you could have Michael Penix, who might be as good, maybe the best deep ball passer in this class, right? Like, this guy pushing the ball on the field is awesome. And he'd be throwing to Jordan Addison, Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson. And they're even getting enough contributions from a guy like Brandon Powell. Like, you're like, what? Where's this coming from? So, man, I would love to see this guy who can just deliver the football. A little bit of an unorthodox, throwing motion, but he can just deliver the football on a dime, especially deep down the field. And with JA and JJ, I want to see that. So love the value here at 20. And right now he's my QB3 just because, man, I love what he can do inside of a pocket. Then we get to Seattle at 21. And actually, I think I'm going to explore a trade here with the Seahawks. And yep, I'm going to go ahead and pull the trigger. I'm going to the Seahawks move back from 21. And I'm going to have the Detroit Lions come up and land an interior defensive lineman that I really, when putting this together, I was kind of frustrated with myself with how long he stayed on the board. Seattle gets an extra 3rd-round pick, very John Snyder, kind of move. Just give me that extra top 100 selection. I'll make good on it. But I'm going to have the Lions take Johnny Newton. And, we get to this point in the draft where, I like Chop Robinson. Chop Robinson definitely could make some sense. And I think he's, strong enough, 250, kind of a yoked-up guy, where he could be a solid, 3-down player and play well against the run. But I'm looking at Johnny Newton, and I'm like, I might prefer him at this point of the draft over Chop Robinson, even though maybe edge is the preferred, pass rush spot you'd like to land if you're the Lions. But this team's already had a huge turnaround against the run. I think Newton only makes that strength even stronger. And right now, they're looking for a 3rd pass rusher. You got Hutchinson, you got Lee McNeil picking up where he was second half last year, which has been awesome. Loved him coming out of NC State. And I think you add Johnny Newton, 1, again, polished run stopper, but 2, really quick out of his stance and already has a refined move scat. Like, you don't need to teach this guy what he needs to do with his hands. This guy has an arsenal of moves, and he's really good about not getting offensive linemen having their hands on him. Like, he's really good at being able to shed that. So that plus the run stopping ability, instant starter, 3-down player, and especially with his athleticism, if the Lions really want to incorporate a lot of stunts and twists like some of the best defenses in the league are using, the Eagles, the Cowboys, the athleticism that Hutchinson, Newton, and McNeil have, those stunts and twists would be just flat out unfair for interior offensive linemen trying to keep up with the speed all 3 of those guys are. So I think that's just a cheat code the Lions could really tap into if they added a Johnny Newton. The same could definitely be true, though, if they took Chop Robinson. So if you're a Lions fan, let me know, Chop or Johnny, who would you take here at 21 after the trade up? Cardinals then at 22. I think a corner is a big time need here, but ultimately this is where I'm gonna have Chop Robinson come off the board. And he's just such a good athlete, and he's so explosive with the line of scrimmage. And again, rocked up 250. He sets the edge really well for someone that maybe you look at and you're like, ideally, like if you're looking at him on paper, you're like 250, can we get up to 255, 260? I think Chop plays above that 250 mark. So would just love the upside that he brings. And, Jonathan Gannon coming from Philadelphia, I think he'll prioritize a deep rotation of edge rushers. And Chop may be a little bit of a work in progress. Still needs to learn a little bit more about being a pass rusher, playing the game with chance against a tackle. But, man, you can't teach athleticism. The dude has twitchiness to spare. So would love that investment there for the Cardinals at 22. Pittsburgh at 23. Easy one for me. I'm going to go with Denzel Burke. We're actually going to have Kalen King fall a little bit in this mock. Just has been a little bit of a disappointing season for a guy who I still think can be a combine warrior, but the tape this year has been a little bit of a bummer. Denzel Burke on the other side, was a guy I was kind of waiting to see. This was the year for him to prove it. And that he has. He's been awesome so far this season. Missed a couple games, but he's been shut down when playing on the outside. We're really seeing the athleticism plus the length and just the general size that he has, 6 foot, 200 pounds. Ideal frame. We're seeing it all kind of come to fruition where the play is looking like a first-round corner. So love this addition. You send him to Pittsburgh, a team that runs a lot of man coverage, still playing close to 60% zone, but one of the higher man coverage rates in the NFL. So him plus Joey Porter Jr., what we've seen out of him this year when he's been on the field, that could be a really awesome duo there on the outside. Still trying to figure out the slot then, but JPJ and Denzel Burke on the outside, I'd be a very happy Steelers fan with that. To the Houston Texans here at 24. I'm going to go outside the box here. I haven't done this yet, but if you're a Texans fan, let me know what you think. I'm going to go JT Sanders. And, maybe his tape this year has been a little bit more second to third round worthy. But at the same time, this guy's going to be a combine warrior. He's no doubt going to be the most athletic tight end other than Brock Bowers going out of this year's class. And we're kind of hitting a spot where you look at the receivers available. Buka, to me, first round type of guy. A.D. Mitchell, definitely first round talent. Troy Franklin's going to have his fans. Xavier Worthy, maybe, Jalen Polk, and a Johnny Wilson in contention to go first round too. But there might turn a point in the draft where you get to a point where it's we could get another receiver or we could get a true mismatch weapon at tight end. And J.C. Sanders is so athletically gifted that, I'm looking at the Texans. Only got a 1-year deal with Dalton Schultz, and he's been a big part of this, C.J. Stroud story. He's been a really productive player, and I could see where they're like, hey, let's go ahead and find a guy who could play that same role and maybe be a little more twitchy and really give linebackers and safeties fits with his size plus his athleticism, ability to run away from linebackers. So love this selection. Maybe a little rich for some, but I am admittedly a huge JT Sanders guy. So I love the idea of him going to Houston, just continuing what they've had with Schultz, maybe even getting a little bit better with a year or two. So if you're a Texans fan, let me know what you think about that pick. To the Kansas City Chiefs here at 25. I'm going to go Xavier Legette. I think this makes too much sense. You get a guy who is absolutely a better yards after what they wanted Sky Moore and Kadarius Toney to be, and at times those guys have been okay at doing. I think Xavier Legette as a yak guy, he's just a clear upgrade there. But he brings a physicality too. He's kind of got this Debo running style to where it's it's not tackling Kadarius Toney. It's tackling DK Metcalf or, a Debo Samuel physical monster. So even just having both those guys in that role, it's just a different body type I want defenses to have to handle, and I want them to have to tackle these different ball carrier types. But also enough route running to be a guy who wins over the middle of the field, specifically in the intermediate part of the field where they're kind of lacking that guy. They have guys who can threaten over the top. They have a couple of yak threats, but who's winning that 10 to 20 yard area? And I think Xavier Legette could definitely be that dude coming out of South Carolina. Then to the Jacksonville Jaguars at 26. I'm actually going to stay at the receiver spot. Let's go with Mecca Egbuka. Calvin Ridley, big game against the Titans. That was a game he needed to have. I needed to see him win in that matchup, which was one he should definitely leverage. I think, Zay Jones, he's missed a lot of time this year. Ridley's definitely been better with Zay Jones on the field, but could they find another pure separator, someone else who can open up that offense a little bit? I wonder if Emeka Egbuka could be that guy. And you're talking about a trio of Ridley, Egbuka, Christian Kirk in the slot, Zay Jones then kind of relegated to that receiver 4. That's a deep room right there. And you could rotate all these guys because my main concern would be Kirk, Egbuka, and Ridley. All those guys are a little slight. Who's winning these contested balls? But if you have Zay Jones as that fourth kind of rotating in with some of these guys, keeping everyone fresh is a good thing, but also he has that more physicality that you're looking for maybe to be that contested catch guy. So I just think it just deepens that receiver room while also adding one more separator, one more guy going to that 10 to 20 yard range to make that offense that much more dynamic. Then to the Dallas Cowboys here at 27. I think this one's tough for me, and this is almost where I wish I had Patrick Paul on the board. I'm going to go J.C. Latham. I think Latham can make the flip to left tackle if push comes to shove, and that's really what I'm trying to find here is who could be that Tyron Smith continuing, right? Like, who can be that guy to take over the reins? Because at this point, I just want to keep Tyler Smith at left guard. He's one of the best left guards in football. He's point blank. He's one of the best guards in football. And I think an elite guard is just as valuable as a really good tackle. So I kind of want to keep him there. Let's just keep continuity. Let's keep consistency. And let's see if we can draft and develop a guy to play left tackle. And at this point, the Cowboys are in bed with Terrence Steele. There's not a way to move on from that contract for at least another year or two. So let's just say Steele has a bounce back year next year. Latham, maybe it just takes a little bit of time. Maybe you can keep Tyron Smith for one more season. Let Latham learn the position at left tackle and maybe coach him up. I do admit, though, this is a little bit of a stretch. And maybe in hindsight, I would have flipped Talise Fuaga going to Green Bay, and that way I would have had Patrick Paul here at 27. But Cowboys fans, let me know if you'd be interested in this type of, taking just a high-end tackle and trying to have him flip the other side. Would you be open to that, or is it too risky in your opinion? All right, back to the Seattle Seahawks after they moved down in this first-round mock. This is an easy spot for me to go Graham Barton. I think he's been such a productive player. And, this year may not be as good at Duke, but he went from like one of the best pass protectors, or which is one of the best tackles in the ACC, to a pretty good player. But he's also been playing banged up, missed time because he's been banged up. Like, he hasn't played a game yet this year at 100%, which I know that's like a lame excuse, but it really has deterred his game. But still, then he's been pretty good. Like, he's still a pretty good player. I think the arm length is the only thing that moved him inside the guard. Otherwise, this guy is absolutely an NFL tackle. I just don't think he has the arm length for it. So for the Seahawks, they needed upgraded interior offensive line, and in specific, pass protectors on the interior offensive line. That's where they've had a lot of fits with some of the guys they've had. They've been good run blockers, but really putrid in pass protection. I think Graham Barton gives you the best of both worlds there at left guard in specific. All right, 49ers here at 29. This is where I'm going to have Talise Fuaga come off the board. Plug and play option there at right tackle. Absolute mauler in the run game. Like, him in this Shanahan blocking scheme would be crazy. He's really quick out of his stance for someone who's 6'6", 330, 335. He is an imposing presence, but he's also pretty light on his feet. May not have the redirect, change of direction skills, but other than that, I think he's a pretty much perfect NFL starter at the next level. So love what he could bring to this 49ers offense, that it could use a guard, it could use a right tackle. You could totally sell me on, like, if Graham Barton's here, that would be a slam dunk pick too. But we just had Barton come off the board. Fuaga, my next selection for the 49ers then. All right, then to the Baltimore Ravens here at 30. I'm going to go to the cornerback spot, and let's make this Kamari Lassiter. Another guy kind of like Burke. This was the year I wanted to see it. He's got the size, got the athleticism, got the arm length. Can I see it all come to the play? Can I see it all come together on the field? And that it has for Lassiter. He's been awesome this season. And this is ultimately a Georgia defense where I think he's being asked to do more than years prior, where the front seven's so imposing. Defenses are not challenging deep down the field. That's a little less true this year. And because of that, Lassiter's had to step up, and that he has. And, the Ravens, Rock Ya-Sin career here, how many times can you kind of lean on that? Even Marlon Humphrey, so many injuries, getting close to that 30 mark, might be even over it. It's just like a long-term need in a position where they can get a little younger. So love the man in Kamari Lassiter. Think he'd be a great addition to the Mike Macdonald defense. So then at 31 for the Miami Dolphins, I'm going to go Amarius Mims. And look, I know Austin Jackson hasn't been totally embarrassing, and maybe interrupts the line. Again, like, you could go Troy Fontenot, you could go Graham Barton here if he was available. I'd be fine with all that. But I think you can get better than Austin Jackson. Also, just to have a third tackle readily available for when Teron Armstead misses time, I think it's a worthwhile addition. I just think about how the Dolphins could not live up to expectations. And one, it's not playing good opponents well, which they've struggled with this year, but also offensive line injuries and secondary injuries. And we've already seen, Ramsey missed time. That changed the complexion of that defense. And we've also seen offensive line injuries, specifically that Philadelphia game, like Lester Cotton's jumping offside every 2 plays, it felt like, So just having some extra reinforcement, and I think ultimately maybe a long-term upgrade over Austin Jackson would make this offensive line that much better, and in turn make this offense that much better. All right, on to Philadelphia here at 32. Let's actually stay at the tackle spot. Let's go Tyler Guyton. I just think a guy who could be a plug-and-play option whenever Lane Johnson does decide to hang it up. Just an absolute mauler in the run game. But just like Fuaga, quick enough out of his stance to where I think he can get to the second level and be a high-level moving blocker, and also a really stout, really solid pass protector. Dylan Gabriel gets the ball out pretty quick, so maybe that does protect Guyton a little bit. But ultimately, I see enough of an anchor there. I see enough footwork. I see enough mirroring ability to where I'm not worried about him at the next level. All right, on to the second round. I'll probably pick up the pace here just to not have this video be exorbitantly long. So we start with the Carolina Panthers. A.D. Mitchell, easy selection here. Receiver's an absolute need. And Jonathan Mingo might be the guy who, kind of becomes that deep play threat. But I also look at Mingo as maybe a guy who can win at all three levels. Ole Miss uses him a lot as a yak guy. So in turn, I'm like, A.D. Mitchell could just be a souped up DJ Chark. And to me, that sounds awesome. A.D. Mitchell, first-round talent. You get him here at the top of the second. Then at 34, a name we haven't talked about with the Arizona Cardinals. Talked about they might need corner. And, I'm going over Kalen King. I'm going to go Quinyon Mitchell. And I've just been hearing a lot of hype out of him. Obviously, Toledo is not one of my first schools I, scout, but heard a lot of hype about Quinyon Mitchell. It might be a guy who goes to a Senior Bowl or, one of those, draft, circuits. And this guy's plate strength is crazy. Like, this guy's a man press guy is awesome. Like, receivers do not get off the line of scrimmage against Quinyon Mitchell. And, Jonathan Gannon, it's a mix between cover 4, which is basically, man, but it's just off, and, single high coverage, man press. Like, he'll mix it up between the two. And I think Quinyon Mitchell is like the guy who goes and gets your best receiver at the line of scrimmage. I think awesome. But I also think there's enough athleticism to where if he plays off coverage, he's just fine. So just looking to find an upgrade there on the outside, and haven't talked about Quinyon Mitchell yet, but I think he's deserving of being this first round, top 50 kind of conversation, maybe even good enough to sneak into the late first round, depending on if he does go to one of these draft circuits, Senior Bowl, something like that, and shows out. Because if he does, then top 32 pick, definitely possible. Then the New England Patriots at 35. This has got to be quarterback here. I'm going to go Bo Nix. Actually, I'm getting ahead of myself. That's the next selection. A little bit off there. Apologies. I'm going to go with Jalen Polk. Forgot we went Caleb Williams, so I'm basically just doubling down the offense. What are the two positions we all agree that New England needs an upgrade at? Quarterback and receiver. I think Jalen Polk's been a really nice player. 6'2", 205, kind of has that size, route running to win at all three levels, good yak player, and just been one of the shining stars, really, for Washington this season. And really, the guys I really was anticipating being awesome this year, not that they still aren't, but Rome Odunze, nailed that one, preseason receiver 3, love that guy. And then I was like, Jalen McMillan, that's going to be the slot receiver that offenses are coveting. Really, Jalen Polk's become that number 2 guy, and he does it from the outside. He can play inside, like just true versatility and true mismatch weapon. So for a team that's looking for a number 1 wide receiver, I think they get a good value here with Jalen Polk. All right, now we're going to go quarterback spot. Promise we would for the New York Giants. It's going to be Bo Nix. And trust me, I'm not a huge Bo Nix guy, but he does look a lot better at Oregon than he did at Auburn. That being said, I think a majority of his passes are screens. I think that offense engineers a completion percentage nearly 80%. I'd love to know what that would be in a more prototypical offense, like Oregon State. If you switch the quarterbacks playing for each team, what do their stat lines look like? I'd really be curious to know what that would look like. But ultimately, Bo Nix has gotten better, still has enough arm strength to get the ball deep down the field. And really what I'm envisioning here is just in case Daniel Jones kind of shits the bed, you have a cheap quarterback option who came to you at 36 and maybe could be that long-term guy. And he's a multi-year college starter, I think a guy who could run an offense pretty quickly. And really, I think if Bo Nix has success at the next level, it's just as a facilitator. He's just playing point guard. He's not going to be the guy to elevate an offense. He's not going to be the elite component that makes the defense scary. He's just going to be the guy that maximizes a Malik Neighbors, a Darren Waller, a Jalen Hyatt, a Saquon Barkley out of the backfield if he's back in New York. I'm just looking for a guy who can run Daboll's offense and maximize and get the ball out into the hands of his playmakers that the Giants still need upgrades at for sure. But in this mock, we go to Malik Neighbors. Hopefully, Bo Nix is the guy that can just put the ball in Neighbors' hands and let him go to work. All right, let's move on to the Washington Commanders here. I'm going to go JT Tuamelo here. I'm not a huge JTT guy, but I think it's worth a shot here at 37. I think the value lines up. Highly touted recruit. You see the athleticism, and he looks like a guy who should be playing at the NFL level, right? Like 6'5", 275, good burst off the line of scrimmage, has the play strength. He's just too inconsistent, too up and down. Like there's times in the season where he turns it on and looks like a monster, and then there's times where you're like, okay, what more can you bring to the table? So definitely looking for a little more consistency through the rest of the way. But at this point for Washington, you moved on from Young, you moved on from Sweat. It's time to take a swing at the bat at edge, and I think the value, again, is worth a shot at what the upside could be for JTT here at 37. Then the Tennessee Titans here at 38. I still think offensive line's a major need. And look, Andre Dillard, he's gotten benched multiple times this year. The guy's making $10 million a year. Ultimately, that's a missed free agent signing. It was worth a shot just to see what he was, former first-round pick. But they paid him a lot of money, and he's been benched multiple times this year. You got to find an upgrade. And Jordan Morgan, yeah, maybe a little undersized, but I think he's got the arm length. 6'4", 305 to 315. Maybe he can find that 315 to 320 range. But also a great mover on the run. So if they stick with this wide zone scheme, whether it's Derrick Henry for the foreseeable future, or it's Tyjae Spears being plugged in as the future running back, I think Jordan Morgan's a great fit for that offense. And like I said, they've already started to try to find an answer who isn't Andre Dillard. It's worth making the selection in the top 50 because Dillard hasn't worked out. Also, right tackle's a problem spot right now. So until they give Peter Skoronski the chance to step up and play tackle's a need. I think you take that here at 38 if you don't in the first round. Then we get back to Washington here at 39. New name to talk about here. I'm going to go with Edgerrin Cooper. I mean, major shades of like Tremaine Edmonds coming out of Virginia Tech. Athleticism through the charts, arm length that you love, prototypical size, and he's made headway in regards to like cleaning up his missed tackles and starting to feel a little bit better in regards to being a run defender, filling lanes, work in progress in zone. But with the athleticism and the arm length, you feel like there's a guy who could develop into, with some time, just like Tremaine Edmunds, into a really solid middle of the field zone coverage defender. So linebacker's been a major issue for Washington. They thought Jamin Davis would be the answer. Ultimately, other than a few splash plays, he's just not that guy. So I think it's warranted, having this, top 50 type of consideration. You get this second round pick for the Montez Sweat selection. We've gone edge, we've gone offensive line. Now let's get that linebacker that hopefully is the guy to lead the middle of that defense moving forward. Also, just want to shout out, I've been saying for years now, Jack Del Rio's got to go. So want to talk about that here while I had a moment. Absolutely finally time. But ultimately, it kind of felt like Josh Harris walks into Ron Rivera's offense and says, it's you or someone else. Who's going to the chopping block? And he just said, hey, let's do Jack the DB's coach, because that's where the defense has struggled. So anyways, let's move off that soapbox and let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. And here I'm just going to go best player available. The Packers are really good about that. I don't think they're like ever forcing needs. They just look at who's here that we didn't think we would be able to have a chance at drafting, and does he fit? And I think Kalen King, as that slot corner in the future, could be an interesting option. And maybe they feel like he could play outside corner. Ultimately, Eric Stokes missed a lot of time this year. Dude, Valentine, first name's escaping me. He hasn't been good. Really, everyone who's not Jair Alexander in that Packers secondary hasn't been good. They've all kind of struggled. So I think whether it's safety or it's slot corner, it's a need here for Green Bay. And actually, they're on the clock in just a handful of picks. So we're gonna come back to that. We'll put a pin in it for just right now. Tampa Bay then at 41. Look, Matt Filer is just not the long-term answer there at left guard. I think Cooper Beebe absolutely could be at one of the best pass protectors on the inside that this class has to offer. Love plugging him in, just be that Matt Filer replacement. Sure, bona fide, absolute stud of a pass protector at the college level. And I think a lot of that will translate to the NFL level. And I think he's got enough movement skills to where he's not a liability in the run game. Just maybe better fit for a gap scheme, which kind of fits with what Tampa Bay is currently doing. So then we get to the Chargers here at 42. Maybe a little bit of a surprise here, T'Vondre Sweat over someone like a Leonard Taylor or Chris Jenkins, who I think I have a little higher than T'Vondre Sweat. But it really just comes down to what player do you want. Like, if I'm drafting Leonard Taylor, I'm looking for pass rush upside. If I'm drafting Chris Jenkins, I'm looking for that run defender. Both those guys are probably 3 techs. Sweat is just the guy that we have been saying for 3 or 4 years now that the Chargers need to invest in. Find this 2-gapping nose tackle to stuff the middle and shore up this run defense. And I don't think Brandon Staley's going to get the chance to draft him. I think he is on the hot seat. Ultimately, I think he's gone this offseason. We'll see if Tom Telesco gets the boot as well. But I do think finding that nose tackle, that 2-gapping run stopper, is a priority. And Sweat's been awesome against the run, but he's also had a handful of games where he's taken over as a pass rusher. So there might be some extra juice there in the middle as a pass rusher too for this Chargers defense. But really focused on the run defense side. Love T'Vondre Sweat going to the Chargers here. So then we get to the Rams at 43. I'm going to go Terrion Arnold here. A guy who's really impressed me, and other than maybe Kalen King, one of the twitchiest sideline, change of direction movers in this class. Like him and Kalen King, just like in the 3-cone, I'm anticipating those guys putting up insane numbers. So change of direction skills, I think, makes him a really nice slot option defending the middle of the field, but also respecting the outside. And right now I'm like looking at the Rams, I'm like, who is that guy, man, in the slot? Don't really have an answer. They could also use an outside corner for sure, but if they go edge and then take away some of those easy throws with an upgrade in the slot, you're forcing quarterbacks to hold the ball a little longer. And against Donald and in this mock, someone like a Dallas Turner paired up with Byron Young on the other side, that's an awesome proposition to bring to the table if you're a Rams fan. So let me know if you think Arnold, could you plug him in the slot? Is that your priority, or would you rather see an outside corner? I'd love to know your thoughts down below. Then we get to the Falcons at 44. What do I want to do here? This is where I think you just go upside. You go Leonard Taylor. We already have the injury to Grady Jarrett. He's out for the rest of the season. He's getting up there in age. Also, Calais Campbell, it's a 1-year deal for a guy who is getting older and older and older. Could use a little bit of youth there on the inside. And Leonard Taylor, his upside is someone who should go in the top 14, not 44, But he's still a guy who's winning off length and athleticism, not with his moves. So he's a work in progress. But for Atlanta, it's warranted work in progress. And maybe there's a world where having him be raw, but then getting to work with Grady Jarrett and maybe you re-sign Calais Campbell is the absolute best thing for him. Small role year 1, learn from those vets, and then by year 2, he's ready to break out. I can see where that's ultimately kind of the best path forward for Atlanta if they do take Leonard Taylor. All right, let's get to the Las Vegas Raiders. I'm going to give them Quinn Ewers. In this mock, I should have prefaced this off top. I'm just going to say J.J. McCarthy's not I'm not having him get drafted here. I'm going to say he goes back to school. I'm going to say he goes back to Michigan for 1 year. Obviously, some of this will coincide with what Jim Harbaugh ultimately does this offseason. If he's leaving, if he's staying, whatever. If he stays, I feel like McCarthy will too. But I just kind of want to explore mock what it would look like, no J.J. McCarthy in it. And obviously, I'm recording this on Saturday before the game, Ohio State, Michigan. So we'll see how he plays there. But that's going to be a huge game for him and where his draft stock goes. Anyways, let's move on now. Quinn Ewers going to the Raiders. He looks okay against everyone who's not Alabama, but then you see the upside that's there. So he's kind of a frustrating prospect. Also missed some time this year. But I could see where, whoever's going to be the head coach next year for the Raiders says, man, this guy has played some of the best games of any college football quarterback in this class against some of the best opponents, right? Like him taking it to Alabama for 5 quarters over the last 2 years is really impressive. Says a lot what this guy can do in big games. So maybe someone buys into that and invests in it. I could see the Raiders where they're like, hey, it's Aiden O'Connell or who, maybe they're looking for that guy who could be like a Quinn Ewers type. Anyways, Green Bay Packers. This is, like I said, we're going to go back to safety spot and let's go Tyler Nubin. Cam Kitchens is awesome as a free safety, but Nubin is not terribly far off, and he's also gotten, over the course of his career at Minnesota, become a much better run defender, a much better tackler. So it's close. 1A, 1B really for me. I like Kitchens a little bit more because I think you can do some stuff with the slot, out of the slot with him. Nubin, I think, is a true center field free safety type that, if the ball comes his way, he can be that last line of defense and not a total disaster, right? Like he can make that last tackle that prevents, a touchdown and instead it's a 15-yard run, something like that. But yeah, like I said earlier, the Packers secondary outside of Jair Alexander has been bad. So here we're adding, Kalen King, maybe he plays outside, maybe he plays inside. Either way, it's an upgrade. And then you add Tyler Nubin to be that center field, playmaking over the top weapon for that defense that they just haven't had since Adrian Amos is gone now. So loved kind of patching up that secondary to get back to where it was, 3 and 4 years ago when Joe Barry first got there. Then we get to New Orleans Saints. I'm going to go Troy Fontenot here. I know I actually haven't heard a whole lot of pushback about interior offensive line from Saints fans, but I know I did last draft cycle. But ultimately, it's like, dude, Cesar Ruiz is not good. He's just not good. Really, the only guy on that interior that I think is really solid is Eric McCoy. I think Eric McCoy is a damn good center. I think you can get an upgrade at both guard spots. So let's take Troy Fontenot right now playing left tackle for Washington. Slide him inside to play left guard. Plug and play guy, ready to go. And the only reason he's not playing tackle for this team is because of his arm length. So because of that, let's just go ahead and draft a NFL ready pass protector to play left guard there for New Orleans. Plus we went receiver. I'm just trying to keep this pass game at a point where it can be dangerous and keep this team as like a potential front runner for the NFC South for the next few years. Cincinnati Bengals next up on the clock at 48. I'm going to go with a different name here that I haven't really talked about yet. Kyrian, I am not totally positive on how to say this last name just yet. Emeg Adeji. If anybody knows how to say it, let me know. But he's a guy who's graded out really, really well at Yale and got his Senior Bowl invite. He's already declared for the NFL draft and already said he's going to go to the Senior Bowl down in Mobile. And I think he's a guy that if he plays as well as he did and has so far at Yale, this is a guy that's going to be a major draft riser. So I feel like he's a name that's right now on the outside looking in for most kind of casual draft fans, but people who are in the nitty gritty are hyping this guy up, and I'm kind of buying into it too. The more I've watched, I'm like, yeah, I think this guy has a lot of those traits, despite coming from a school like Yale. Doesn't normally, again, kind of like Toledo, not one of the first schools I watch, but I think this guy has the traits to become an NFL starter, and I could see him getting a big push if he performs well at that senior circuit. So definitely need to keep an eye on, and maybe could skirt into the top 50, like I have him here, going to Cincinnati. All right, let's get to the Indianapolis Colts here at 49, and I'm actually going to go... I'm going to go Xavier Worthy here. I thought about Troy Franklin, but I think they kind of both bring a lot of the same traits to the table. Franklin with maybe a little bit more size, but I'm just looking for more speed and more yards after the catch to this offense, in which you have Anthony Richardson, who is dynamic with the ball in his hands. Jonathan Taylor, need I say more? Josh Downs, who's also awesome with the ball in his hands out of the slot. And you just add one more guy in the mix that's like, dude, I got to respect the over-top speed, but also this guy is an absolute monster to try to bring down. Like, how do I keep up with his sideline, his lateral movement skills on top of the straight line speed? He's just hard to contain. We've seen a lot of breakaway runs from Xavier Worthy this year at Texas. So basically just trying to find an upgrade over Alec Pierce. Doesn't have the physicality that maybe Pierce brings, or maybe even just like the straight up vertical. I know that was a big reason why Pierce went as high as he did, but I think everything else Worthy brings to the table is an upgrade over Alec Pierce, and it's just one more dynamic ball handler that defenses are like, okay, Richardson's tough to bring down. Taylor's hard to handle. Downs can be shifty, and they got Xavier Worthy. Oh man, how do we have an answer in tackling all these different types of ball carriers? And that's what I want defenses to be questioning. All right, anyways, move on to the Buffalo Bills here at pick number 50. This could be another spot where honestly, I don't hate the idea of doubling down on pass catcher here. Don't hate it whatsoever. Also a spot where you could go safety, could go corner. And I think ultimately that's where I'm going to go. I'm going to go TJ Tampa. Like a lot of what he brings to the table here for the Buffalo Bills. Had a pretty solid year so far this season at Iowa State. Enough size, enough athleticism. Maybe it doesn't wow anybody with anything, but a physical player too, can go get receivers at the line of scrimmage. Just checks enough boxes. And we're just trying to add more and more to that secondary because, Trey White at this point, injuries are kind of turning him into a player that he, just that he once was, that he's not anymore. And Kyrie Elam's like struggling to get on the field as a former first rounder. Like could easily be an offseason trade candidate for the Buffalo Bills. So trying to add a little bit more juice to that secondary. I think TJ Tampa has a lot of the traits that Sean McDermott might covet. All right, then we get to the Philadelphia Eagles. Really easy one here. Braylon Trice. I just think this fit makes a ton of sense. Speed to power guy replacing Brandon Graham, who cannot play forever. This is almost surely probably Brandon Graham's last year. I've been saying that for a couple of years now, but if Brandon Graham decides to hang it up, Braylon Trice is the perfect edge rush type to plug in and play that role. Then we get to the Giants at 52. And edge is interesting here. This is another spot where like offensive tackle, had one been available, is really, really tempting. You could also go into your offensive line. Don't hate that whatsoever. And honestly, at this point, I think I might lean in that direction. I think I might just go Zach Sinter here. Get a clear upgrade at left guard. I would love to have a tackle be available here. We can kick Evan Neal inside, but just because there's not one available, I don't want to reach. Let's go ahead and draft an upgrade there. Sinter's been playing right guard, but I feel fine with him switching over to the left side. Or you keep him at right guard and you figure out who can flip over to the other side and play left guard. The interior offensive line has been just as bad as the tackle play has this year, so you're just looking for any offensive lineman. To me, Sinter's the best guy on the board. Minnesota Vikings. Let's go with Chris Braswell here. Kind of a fun idea, and actually, in retrospect, I should have saved him for a couple picks from now. But anyways, Braswell going to Houston was actually my original idea, and I kind of jumped the gun here. But Braswell been really, really impressive so far this year at Alabama. And actually, now I think about it, I think I had him going to Minnesota in my last mock. So sorry to repeat here. But you're seeing the juice, man. Like not a guy who's seen a whole lot of the field up until this season, but Will Anderson's gone. Dallas Turner's getting a lot of attention. And Braswell sees the opportunity. Enough size, enough play strength, plus good first step off the line of scrimmage. I think this guy is worthy of being in the top 2 rounds and kind of in that conversation. So Minnesota needs edge bad. Get the type of athlete and the first step juice that Braswell brings to the table. I think it's a really nice step in the right direction. Pittsburgh Steelers at 54. Look, linebacker's been a huge issue for the Steelers since Ryan Shazier had to retire, and they have not found like a perfect answer since then. So also, this is about the time of the year where Pittsburgh's always thin at linebacker, so let's just put an extra body in there, right? And I love Barrett Carter, like sideline to sideline skills, awesome coming downhill, hard hitter. And honestly, the instincts for the game are coming around, man. Like I think he's starting to get a really good feel for the position, and just at this point, he's playing linebacker as opposed to thinking about playing linebacker, if that makes sense. Like you're starting to see him just become more and more natural in coverage too. So I think he's a guy that's only getting better there at Clemson, which is awesome. Plus he has the athleticism and everything you really want to be an NFL linebacker. So a guy I think stock's on the rise. Then we get to Houston. This is kind of where, damn it, if I could do it again, I would have just had Braswell come here because then you pair him up with Will Anderson and it's kind of a fun Alabama story there. But let's go Jonah Ellis. This is what I meant to do for the Vikings, to be honest with you. But Ellis has been an awesome story this year at Utah. One of the nation's leaders in sacks and a killer spin move. Might be a little undersized. Which him and Will, not like Will Anderson's like the beefiest edge rusher, so maybe you're a little concerned about that. The same could have been true about Braswell too, but honestly, let's just get guys who can pin their ears back and get after the quarterback. And Ellis does it as good as anybody in this class. Again, just maybe a little undersized, a little lightweight, but man, the numbers this year, the production specifically as a finesse rusher has been awesome. So one more edge rusher for this Houston defense, and let's make this a unit that's really, really scary to face week in and week out. Then to Cleveland here at 56. I was kind of thinking about, I was like, who's their yards after the catch guy? Elijah Moore does some of that, but also like Antoine Wells Jr. could be a really nice ad. I do have to admit, I'm a little biased. He is from my hometown. He's from, the Chesterfield, Midlothian, Virginia area. And I'd love to hopefully maybe get in touch with him, maybe do an interview before the draft, because he's a fun player to watch, man. And he's an awesome yards after the catch weapon there at South Carolina. Been a little outshined by Xavier Legette, but I still think there's a chance that, second, third round, he could be a guy wins at the combine, and kind of boosts his draft stock from there. I look at this Cleveland offense. It's like, who's that guy that can engineer quick, easy throws to and just have as an extension of the run game? And Moore kind of is that, but haven't really utilized him in that way. So maybe Antoine Wells Jr. could be that dude. All right, let's go on the Jacksonville Jaguars here at 57. A pick that I've made plenty of times. Gabriel Murphy, just a really solid, edge rusher. 3 straight years of elite pass rushing grades from PFF. The production to go with. Good combination of size plus quicks. Pretty good hand usage as well. I feel like this is a guy who can be a plug-and-play starter on the other side of Josh Allen. And then you have Travon Walker moving inside, moving out. And then, maybe even right away, Murphy's just the third edge rusher. But nonetheless, however the rotation plays out between those three, those are three ideally moving forward that are your pass rush trio of the future, Allen, Walker, and Murphy. And I feel like they're just missing that third guy. So I feel like Murphy's worth the swing of the bat here at 57. For the Kansas City Chiefs here at 58. Honestly, I don't hate the idea of doubling up at receiver here. Troy Franklin's actually a really tempting name just because it's like Legette's a good yard after the catch guy, but with physicality, Franklin could kind of do the same stuff, but with speed. And you could move on from Marquez Valdes-Scantling and just still have Franklin be that over-the-top weapon. I'm going to go Johnny Wilson here. And, I know like Mike Renner from The Messenger is thinking Wilson might play tight end. I don't rule that out either. So either way you spin it, whether he's just the possession receiver this team doesn't have right now at 6'7", 235, and moves pretty well for that size, cool. He's that outside guy that can just be a possession type, keep the chains moving. Or maybe he does play some tight end. And maybe could help, answer whatever happens with Travis Kelce whenever he does hang it up this offseason, next off, whatever it is. So I think there's some flexibility and you have some fluidity, really, what he's going to play. But nonetheless, I don't hate Kansas City Chiefs doubling down at pass catcher because, look at the Chiefs and why they're losing games. And I think everyone would just about say they don't have enough guys winning on the outside. So, honestly, doubling down on it, I don't think it's a bad strategy for Kansas City. Plus, their positions of high value. So, if you get a cheap receiver on a rookie contract, that's a huge W when you're paying Mahomes and Chris Jones and both those tackles, or really just Jawan Taylor and all these other superstars they have on roster. You got to find a place to get cheap. Receiver's a good place to do it. Then we get to Detroit at 59. This is where I think I got to go look back to the cornerback room. Let's go with Josh Newton, kind of like TJ Tampa. Good, solid, kind of checks a lot of boxes, but maybe not special at any one thing, but just does a lot right. And this is going to be a cornerback room that needs as many bodies as possible after this year. Emmanuel Mosley already down, and it gets pretty thin after that. You're going to have Cam Sutton there for sure. You're going to have Brian Branch there for sure, but then it's like, okay, who else is playing on the outside? So I think adding an extra body to that mix, Josh Newton's been as good for TCU as really anybody on that team has been, especially this year. It's been a tough season for the Horned Frogs, but I think Josh Newton's a guy who could still go in the top 2 rounds. Then we get to Dallas here at 60. I'm going to go with Blake Corum. I just think partnering up with Tony Pollard, assuming they do bring him back. Pollard is the scat back, and he ultimately was a little bit more efficient as a complementary piece than the guy who's getting the ball all the time. But that's fine. He's still a really good player, and I still like Tony Pollard a ton. I'm not trying to crap on him. But I think if you have Corum be the guy who's running between the tackles, steady, great vision, great contact balance, and he just feels like a guy who any handoff, if it goes for 8 to 15 yards, it feels like it makes sense for Blake Corum. He's just one of those types of backs, solid, consistent, keeps the ball moving forward at that type of clip. Won't break off big runs, but I think that's why you have Pollard, right? These two kind of play off each other really, really well. It almost feels like Blake Corum's just kind of like a younger, better, more juiced up Zeke in a lot of ways. And I don't really say juiced up in obviously a steroid sense, but I just mean feels like Zeke maybe has lost a zap from when he first got to Dallas, and Corum just kind of almost plays like Zeke, who didn't lose that zap. So it could be a really nice pairing there in the backfield for Dallas. Then we get to Baltimore at 61. This is actually, I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to go Roman Wilson. Look, and I know a lot of people are going to be like, we've invested a ton in receiver like OBJ. He looked good last week. OBJ's on a 1-year contract. Rashad Bateman, yeah, he's had moments. But ultimately, I think this team's kind of missing a man beater, and I don't think Bateman has the physicality to do it. I don't think Zay Flowers is big enough to do it. In OBJ, we'll see where he ends up next offseason. Roman Wilson, not the most physically, he's not Johnny Wilson, right? He's not 6'7", 235, but he's got enough size and play strength, and he's really sudden. He gets good separation out of those in-breaking routes. He gets away from DBs, and I think maybe he could be the guy who is that man coverage beater. And then if you're playing off coverage, Zay Flowers is awesome against that zone. Rashad Bateman's awesome at finding the soft spots in that. So it feels like they're missing one more wide receiver who can beat a certain style of defense. Roman Wilson might be that guy. Also, I haven't talked about him yet in any of these mock drafts, and he's had a really solid season for the Wolverines. So I want to give him a shout here. So then we get on to San Francisco at 62. Another name I haven't talked about a whole lot, but why not 6'2", 207-pound Cam Hart? I think this team could use another corner on the outside. The front seven's going to be great. And Hart's had a little bit of that at Notre Dame over his career there with the Fighting Irish. But I love the size, the play strength, and think he could be a really nice addition on the other side of Charvarius Ward. And it almost kind of feels like they kind of have similar strengths too. So you can really buckle down and get receivers to the line of scrimmage and really force quarterbacks to hold the ball a long time. Then Miami at 63. Chris Jenkins, this was a no-brainer for me. Get that high-end run defender next to Christian Wilkins and just let him focus on being an awesome pass rusher, which he already is. But if you lighten the load for him and let Jenkins kind of eat blocks, be the run defender, making stops, and let Wilkins just pin his ears back, go get QBs, that pass rush gets that much scarier. Wish this team could have had Jalen Phillips the rest of the way, but it's a torn Achilles, and he might even miss some time next year, too. So, some additional defensive line reinforcements go a long way. Jenkins puts on the inside, Phillips on the edge, but nonetheless, an extra body there could go a long way. Jenkins much more of a run defender than a pass rusher, but maybe there's some headway that Wilkins can work there and kind of coach up Jenkins and make him a better pass rusher. But also, it's fun to have Chris Jenkins, Chris Jenkins, I should say, back in the AFC East. That's just a fun story. Then we get to the Philadelphia Eagles, last pick in this mock. I'm going to go Cedric Gray. Just love the sideline-to-sideline athleticism the guy plays with, and he is just an awesome zone coverage defender and really is the heart of the middle of that UNC defense. So I want to go ahead and showcase each and every pick we made, all 64 selections. Apologies for some delays. I had to kind of shift a couple of things as we're going on the fly here with the updated order after the Thursday and Friday football games, but still got all the picks that I wanted, all the player-to-team landing spots that I wanted to have on. Also wanted to get one more trade in there in the second round, but for whatever reason, the trade engine wasn't cooperating. So sorry about that. But again, here's all 64 picks from this mock draft. Let me know what you think down below in the comment section. Who went too high? Who went too low? Who's your favorite team? Did you like the haul I gave your squad? And if not, as long as you're respectful and tell me what direction you would have gone in, I will respond to your comment. I respond to every comment that's not, you're an idiot, shut up, you suck, something like that. So as long as you're respectful and want to kind of voice your opinion and want your thoughts heard by me, let me hear it down below in the comment section. But hopefully you guys enjoyed. Hit the like button if you did. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and want to see more football content like this. Until next time, my name is Tej, and signing off.